Thanks, Tim. Well, and first of all, I want to say hey to everybody watching on Zoom. So honored that you're in with us today, and thanks for tuning in. I do want to pause though and say, as I look back on y'all, back on 2011, Wendy and I are actually in 16 days of our new journey. So, we 16 days ago, we literally walked down this path. I sent Tim the video of our church on both sides cheering us on. We got in the car and drove away into this new season. And so when we look back, Behringer will be the first company that gave us an opportunity in this new season. So thank you for that. I told Wendy, take a picture, because when we do this 10 years from now, we'll get a picture of y'all. So thank you for letting us do this. If I bomb, then you might want to come back and tell me that I've made a bad career move. So I want to let you know that. Very excited about what we're going to talk about today. And the reason we left the church is because of the message that I want to bring to you. And I've been doing this for a while. I've just seen so many incredible organizations like you understanding this. And what I might do for you today is give you some language to go, oh, we're already doing that, but it's just giving you the language. And for me to reiterate how special it is of who you are and what's going on here. And sometimes it takes an outsider to come from the outside to let you know how great this is. So to kind of set you up for where we're going to go today, I'm going to tell you a little bit of my background, and that'll help set up where we're going to go. Like Tim, I'm a preacher's kid, and I promised myself that I would never, ever, ever, never work at a church. So I worked at a church for 17 years. So if you get nothing out of this, never say you're never going to do something. So I recently told God, I'm never going to pastor church, so I think he pays closer attention to that. I recently told God I'm never going to be a billionaire. I'm going to see how he handles that one. So I grew up in Atlanta. I became a big sports fan. Growing up in Atlanta as a sports fan is a very bleak existence. We've built more stadiums and we've won championships in Atlanta. And we got big 15-3 last night by the Dodgers. But I love sports. And so eventually I found myself being over sports marketing at Chick-fil-A. And when you grow up in Atlanta, they teach you to do two things: eat Chick-fil-A and drink Coca-Cola. And I do both of those really, really well. So in my sports marketing days, I want to tell you a little bit about that and then tell you how I got from Chick-fil-A to pastor to here. And believe it or not, I think this connects to Behringer and what we're going to talk about for a few minutes. So my role at Chick-fil-A, one of the things I did is I managed our sports marketing properties. So for example, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which is a college football bowl game, started at the Georgia Dome. We blew that up recently and built a whole new stadium in Atlanta. And so my job was to take these sports marketing properties, have people come in, have an interaction with Chick-fil-A so that they would do one thing, that's eat more chicken. So that was my job. So way back in the day, back in 1999, I was sitting in the Georgia Dome in June, and the game's in December. I'm thinking, okay, what can we do to have an interaction with the fans so that they can have a great interaction with Chick-fil-A? So I had this idea. I sat down, I saw a cup holder there at the seats, 72,000 seats, 72,000 cup holders. And I said, what if we did this? What if we put these little eat more chicken cows in all of the cup holders of the Georgia Dome? 72,000 cows, 72,000 fans. And I thought this was a really good idea. The problem was I didn't have money in my marketing budget to do this, to pay for 72,000 cows. But I knew someone who did. His name was Truett Cathy, and he didn't invent the chicken, but he invented the chicken sandwich, and he was the founder of Chick-fil-A. So I got in my car, I drove down to the home office at Chick-fil-A. Truett was there constantly, even at, he could have retired, but he just loved what he did. So I knocked on the door, sat down, and Truett had this desk here, and you'd have two chairs here, but there was a chair here that he wanted to get closer to you so he could hear you. So I pitched my idea. I said, how cool will this be, Truett? But I don't have money in my marketing budget, but rumor has it that your 401k is fully funded about 1 billion times over. So would you write a check for 72,000 cows? Now, Truett was very generous, but he was very frugal. So we had a great conversation. Finally, Truett sits down, looks at me and says, Jeff, do you think I should do this? In other words, write a check for 72,000 cows. I said, yes, sir. Truett, I think you should. So he goes, all right, let's do it. So I walked out of the office. I felt like a rancher. I got 72,000 cows, right? And now I got to figure out, how do I get 72,000 cows in the cup holders? As my wife, Wendy, says, you're wow, but you're not how. You have absolutely no idea how to do any of these ideas you have. So fast forward to December. It took us 2.5 days. Thank you, Chris. 2.5 days to get these in the cup holders. So fast forward to the game. It's the University of Virginia versus the University of Georgia, and I'm a Georgia alum. So the gates open up 2 hours before. I'm in the press box. I'm watching what happens. People come down. They get their cows. Kids are saying it, showing it to their parents. And I'm thinking, whose idea was this? Oh, it was my idea. Thank you very much. Little did I know disaster was about to strike. So the game begins. Virginia gets the ball first. They score 7-0. They get the ball back, score again 14-0. They get the ball back again 21-0. They score 3 straight times. And the Georgia fans in the Georgia Dome are thinking, are we going to get blown out of our own state here? So Georgia gets the ball back. They're headed toward the end zone, get inside the red zone, inside the 20-yard line, and an official drops a penalty flag, effectively ending the Georgia drive. And the fans in the Georgia stands lose their minds. And there's a guy in the stands, and he looks at his cow, the cup holder, and he takes his cow, and he throws it onto the field. And guess what happens next? 20,000 of his closest friends take their cows and throw it onto the field. And I see my marketing career flash before my eyes, right? Y'all, they had to delay the game to sweep all the dead little cows off of the Georgia Dome field because that's a long flight for those cows, right? Now, I know that you've probably had a bad day at the office, but my bad day at the office was broadcast nationally on ESPN. And rather than go to commercial break, oh no, ESPN has to stay locked and loaded on this marketing disaster. And one of the commentators says, who was the marketing genius that came up with this idea? Yeah. So as a result of that, I became a pastor. And that was a little of my journey from Chick-fil-A. Now, the reason I tell you this is this, believe it or not, this really connects to Behringer and what you want to be known for. My boss, his name is David Salyers, when he knows David very, very well, comes up to me. And you know what David's going to say, right? It rhymes with "you're tired." Because he's looking at this situation. The CEO and the founder of the company has written a big personal check, and now it's just a disaster on the field. And David comes up to me, looks at this situation, and he says, Jeff, there's an idea here. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is a disaster. He goes, no, there's an idea here. He says, the publicity value we're going to get out of this is going to be enormous. But what if we could, at next year's game, think of a different way to get the cows on the field? So the following week, we sat in a conference room at Chick-fil-A, and we came up with this idea. We decided for the next year's game, what we would do is we would put parachutes on the cows. And as the two teams came onto the field, we would drop thousands of parachuting cows onto the field. That was such a hit that that's been a Chick-fil-A tradition for the last 20 years. And what I thought was my worst day in my marketing career actually ended up being the best day in my marketing career. In fact, a few years ago, Georgia played North Carolina in the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic. And Chick-fil-A asked me to do the pregame prayer at the Georgia Dome. And as Georgia and North Carolina came onto the field, we look up, my son's with me, and we see these thousands of parachuting cows falling from the sky. And I said, son, don't ever forget this. Those days that I was convinced that this was a terrible day, if you keep trying, if you keep moving, if you keep working, it actually can end up being one of your best days. Now, the reason I tell you that is in that moment, David Salyers built a lasting relationship with me. In fact, David recently retired from Chick-fil-A. He's launching a brand new business this Thursday. It's on this big webcast he's doing, and I'm hosting it for him because of that relationship. And so when it comes to building lasting relationships, one of the things we have to understand is how to be genuinely for people. And what I want to do is I want to talk to you about why I think this word, in terms of what you're doing, is so incredibly important. In fact, my favorite definition of the word for is to be in favor of. And so I want to talk about how a thriving business can be in favor of people, and why being in favor of people is a great business strategy. And here's why. I spent a number of years in the business world. I spent a number of years in the nonprofit world. And here's what I believe. I believe there's a lot that the people in the business world can learn from guys like me in the nonprofit world. I also think there are a lot of things that the business leaders can learn from nonprofit leaders and back and forth. One of the things I think business leaders can learn from nonprofit people like me is the only thing we have to sell is purpose. But when you sell purpose and you combine it with a compelling product or service, it's a game changer. And the way you do that is to genuinely be and authentically be for people. So what I want to do, I'm going to walk you through this real quick. And here's when Tim and I had our initial conversation, and then when I came up to meet with Tim and Chris and Brent, I came home and told Wendy, this company is unique. This is a for company. And this, by the way, that meeting just helped give me a little bit more confidence to know that I can take what we're doing isn't as crazy, because there are companies out here like y'all. So when it comes down to is this, that in today's world, it's no longer about being the best company in the world. It's about being the best company for the world. And I'm going to share with you some marketing research that basically is saying that as thriving businesses go toward the future, what people are asking is, we want to do business with people that are making a difference in our community. And if you're not making a difference in our community, we're going to shy away and find someone who will. This is where thriving businesses of the future are going. And I know this sounds like something a pastor would say, all right? But don't forget, I quit 17 days ago, all right? So this is actually a business deal that I'm going to try to prove to you going forward. Now, to do that, what I want to do is I want to talk about 2 questions that help grow your organization and you. And the word grow is relative. I mean, I could be with Behringer today and you could have a definition of what you want to, how you would characterize growth. I'll be with another company in a few weeks. They might have a different way to talk about how they would characterize growth. But at the end of the day, we all need to be growing. And I want to talk about these 2 questions. And here's why I came up with these 2 questions. And here's why I wrote the book. A few years ago, I was with a mentor of mine. And I said, what a blessing it has been for me that I have had the opportunity to work for Chick-fil-A, which is a $13 billion organization. They've had same-store sales growth every year for 50 years. Now, same-store sales growth, you take away the new stores and you go, how are the existing stores going? To get same-store sales growth year after year, and believe it or not, in COVID, they're actually having a fantastic year, right? Now, so I got to work for Chick-fil-A. At the same time, as Tim said, I had the opportunity for the last 17 years to work with one of the largest churches in America. And so I was telling my mentor, what a blessing I got to work for Chick-fil-A and I got to work for North Point. And my mentor challenged me and he said, well, you're half right. He said, it was a blessing, but it's a stewardship opportunity. And you owe it to the rest of us to tell us what you learned. Because you were on the front row at Chick-fil-A and you were on the front row at North Point. What did you learn? Well, and then he said, if you could put it on half a piece of paper, what would you say? And I said, well, I think there's 2 questions as I reflect on that. So I want to share with you those 2 questions. And I think these 2 questions help churches, help businesses, help nonprofits, help organizations. But more importantly, and this may be the most important thing, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this afternoon, these 2 questions can help grow you. And every thriving organization, if you look at it and pull the cover back, thriving organizations are full of thriving, growing people. So I want to talk to you about how to do that. Now, to do that, we're going to go on a little bit of a marketing journey, all right? And we're going to talk about this question, so hang with me if you're not into marketing, but I think you probably can relate to this question. One of the most important questions from a marketing standpoint that any organization can ask is, hey, how'd you hear about us? How'd you hear about our organization? How'd you hear about Behringer? How'd you hear about our church? How'd you hear about our company? And typically they list a few options, right? Television, radio, billboard, social media, and other. And from a marketing standpoint, what drives marketing people like me crazy is there's one box that gets checked more than any other. And it's this one. It's the other box. And we all know what the other box is. It's positive word of mouth advertising. It's customer referrals. And the reality is, if you can do TV, radio, billboard, social media, and all that, you should. That's awesome. Not discounting any of that. But at the end of the day, it's the other box that we've got to understand. For example, if you were to tell me as a former church leader, Jeff, we'll give you all the money that you need to have the coolest website, or we'll give you 50 people that will tell their friends about your organization, I'll take those 50 people every single time. So the question, though, is how does Behringer unlock the other box or continue to unlock the other box so that your former customers generate new customers? And here's why this is important. In today's world, a business is no longer what it tells customers it is. A business is what customers tell other customers it is. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the ballgame. That's the other box. And so what I want to do is to teach you, or not teach you, you already understand how to do this, reiterate why this is so important. Because when you do this, you create vision carriers for Behringer. When we did this at our church, we created vision carriers for our church. And the reason this is important is the more vision carriers that Behringer has, vision casters Behringer will have. So the question in terms of growth is, how do we create more vision carriers in Charlotte? How do we create more vision carriers in Raleigh so that the more vision carriers you have, the more vision casters you have? Well, to do that, that takes us back to these 2 questions. So I want to walk you through these 2 questions, talk to you about why these 2 questions are so important, show you how you're actually already doing this, but maybe remind you to just keep doing what you're doing, all right? So question number 1 is simply this, in terms of these 2 questions. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for? And a lot of organizations assume the answer to this, But when we assume the answer to this, we make a massive assumption. We say, you know, we covered this 5 years ago at the retreat with the, you know, and when we do that, we're making a huge assumption that everybody remembers that. That's why the onboarding document that Chris gave me when I came to Charlotte, so cool. I've shown that to so many people. What that is doing is reiterating what you want to be known for. Now, to do that, here's why this is important. When there's confusion in the office space about what you want to be known for, there will be confusion in the marketplace, no question about it. And we're going to talk about how to avoid this kind of a confusion going forward. And this is what I've already seen in my few interactions with you all. When purpose lives in an organization, the organization lives in and on purpose. So what do you want to be known for? And is it a consistent message that everybody knows? So what I want to do, I want to give you a couple of examples of this. One, I think they got this right, and one to show you how easy it is to kind of slip off of what you want to be known for. One is Zappos, and Zappos is an online shoe retailer. They went from 0 sales to $1 billion in sales in 10 years. They were recently bought by Amazon, like we all will be one day. And so what Zappos did is when their CEO, Tony Hsieh, when he said, hey, what do we want to be known for? He didn't say we want to sell shoes. He said, we want to be known for delivering happiness, which is a little like, really? I mean, it's so squishy. How do you sell shoes for delivering happiness? But what Tony wanted to do is to have such a customer-minded approach that everyone in the organization knew at the end of the day, we're not about selling shoes. Shoes are a platform for us to deliver happiness. And they have created a loyal tribe because they have people on the other side of Zappos have realized this company really does deliver happiness. Let me give you an example of this. A few years ago, David Salyers, who I mentioned earlier, he and I went out to visit Zappos. They're out in Las Vegas. We went and toured their offices. Everywhere we went, y'all, it was deliver happiness, deliver happiness, deliver happiness, deliver happiness, all over the building. In fact, even in the restrooms, it said deliver happiness, which was a little weird, I'll say that. But everywhere you went in the building, it was deliver happiness, deliver happiness, deliver happiness. And so they introduced us to the call center, some of the team of that you know, pick up the phone call and sell shoes. And they introduced me to one of the legends in the call center. And I was like, wow, you're a legend. How did you get to be a legend in the call center? And then they told me the story that one day this lady got a call, and in the course of the conversation, she could tell that the customer or a potential customer on the other side wasn't doing very well. So she paused and asked the question, are you okay? And there was a pause, and the customer said, no, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And she began to tell the Zappos employee that she had just recently lost her husband, and it was a very difficult situation. Well, the Zappos employee could relate to that, and that began a course of a conversation, believe it or not, of 6 hours on the phone. At the end of this conversation, she didn't even end up buying shoes. But what Zappos knew is that when that lady needs to call and ask for shoes, she knows where she'll call. But for me, what was so cool is they didn't say, how did you waste 6 hours and not make a sale? They said, way to go, you're a legend, you delivered happiness. And this kind of approach of wanting to be known for what you're for is really, really important. Now, let me show you a way of how it can get a little slip off of this. I love this organization, Burger King, but several years ago, they asked one of my marketing heroes, Al Reese, they said, Al, could you come help us with our chicken sandwich sales? Because the chicken sandwich sales at Burger King are not doing very well right now. So Al said, yeah, I'll come help you. So they get to the meeting, and the meeting begins, and Al raises his hand. And they said, okay, Al, you have a question? He goes, yes, can we go outside for a moment? And they're like, go outside? He goes, yeah, can you follow me? I want to take you somewhere. Well, this is Al Reese. He's a marketing legend. So they all go outside, and he takes them to the corporate headquarters sign. All right, so it's this gigantic sign that says Burger King. And Al says, on the count of 3, what I want you to do is I want you to say the name of the company out loud. And they're all looking at him like, what are you doing, Al? But okay, it's Al Reese. So he counts them down, 3, 2, 1, and they all say, Burger King. And Al says, right. Now here's my question. Why are you selling chicken sandwiches? You're the king of burgers. You'll never be the king of chicken sandwiches. And that was the last day that Al worked on the Burger King account. But here's my point, okay? And this is really important. You can't be known for everything. You do need to be known for something. What is that? You can't be known for being the king of burgers and the king of chicken sandwiches. You got to go deep. What do you want to be known for? This is why this next statement is a really important statement. You can't miss this. This is what you want to be known for. And I'm telling you, so I've been doing this for a while now. It's so much so that we've ventured off into this new career. And I told Tim and Chris and Brent this when I was in Charlotte. You have no idea how rare this is. You have no idea how rare, and not only is this rare, that it's just 3 words. Because the fewer the words, the better. Vision's like a bucket of water. The more words that are in the bucket, the more the words are going to fall out. This is really hard to get what you want to be known for into 3 words. But when you do, it has traction. Just do it. Eat more chicken. Building lasting relationships. Or Zappos did this one less. Deliver happiness, right? Now, there's a challenge with this, and I'm going to talk about this challenge in just a second. But when it comes to this is what you want to be known for. This is extraordinary. The thing I love about this is it doesn't necessarily have anything in essence to do. It's kind of like Zappos. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this per se, like Deliver Happiness has nothing to do with shoes, but Deliver Happiness has everything to do with shoes. Building lasting relationships has everything to do with your work. It distinguishes you. You've got to stay on message, all right? Now, that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, what are you known for? What are you known for? Now, the first question is the one for us to wrestle with, right? It's the one that we get to go on offsites with. And I'm so grateful I was at this offsite and not the one in 2011. That looked a little gnarly. So y'all have gotten better over the years. So this is, that question number 1 is ours to wrestle with. Question number 2 is ours to influence, but it's not ours to answer. You know who this is? You know who this question is for? It's for your customers. It's for your clients. And this is when they reflect back to you whether or not you are delivering on building lasting relationships. This is when Zappos customers deliver back to Tony Shea and their team whether they are truly delivering happiness, right? Now, here's the power of these 2 questions, and don't miss this. And those of you that are watching on Zoom, hang with me. When the answers to these 2 questions match, when what you want to be known for is what you're known for, you create vision carriers. In fact, what you do is you do this. You create a sales force for free. Customers tell other customers about you, and they begin to talk about how you have built a lasting relationship. So I don't know if Chris Hyatt is on this call or not, but Chris, we've already talked about you and how you went to dinner with a client, not just like out to dinner, you went to their house, which is amazing. What you're doing in that moment is you're building lasting relationships. And I'm telling you, gang, that is huge. And it might seem like, hey, I just went to dinner at their house. No. You are building a lasting relationship. That's a huge deal. Now, to do that, here's the reality for all this. For any organization, there's a gap between what you want to be known for and what you are known for, because there is no perfect organization. Let me just pick on a company I love, Chick-fil-A. Somewhere in America today, in just a few minutes, somebody will get a cold batch of waffle fries, okay? They're not gonna get it right all the time, but every single day, what Chick-fil-A needs to do, what Behringer needs to do, what Zappos needs to do, what a church needs to do, is to shrink the gap between what you wanna be known for and what you are known for. And when a team understands this, we understand that we are all, while we might have different roles, we're all doing the same thing. We come to work every day to shrink the gap between what we want to be known for and what we are known for. But there is a gap. Now, to shrink the gap between the 2 questions, I want to talk about the 4 groups of people that you need to be for, all right? And I call this being 4 for 4, being 4 groups of people. And what I want to do is walk you through this real quick, and then we're going to give you some specific examples. First, there's for the customer, or in my former case, as a tender or pastor. There's for the team, for the community, and for you. And typically when I do this for companies, they look at this and they go, well, duh, this is so obvious, Jeff. This is who we need to be for. But there's a huge shift that's happening right now. There's a huge shift that's happening in marketing. There's a huge shift that's happening in organizations. I think this is really important. And let me talk to you about why when organizations look at this, they kind of shrug their shoulders and go, we already do this. But what happens is too often the spotlight that the organization puts on is that they put the spotlight on themselves. And they talk in their marketing and advertising, it's look how great we are. Look how wonderful we are. Did you know that we're better than our competitors? By the way, none of us cares anymore that Burger King thinks they're better than McDonald's. That's not surprising information to us. But the spotlight is on them. What thriving organizations of the future, and this is what you're doing, Behringer, you're taking the spotlight off of you and you're putting the spotlight on the community and saying, look how great you are. And when you do that, you genuinely and authentically show customers, the team, and the community, and ultimately you, that this organization is genuinely for them. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Typically in marketing and communication, the highlight of these four, the business is at the center, right? And the spotlight is on the business. And I put in the book, if a business was a person, many businesses would be considered narcissist. Look how great we are. We're so much better than everybody. We're awesome. In fact, I was with a multi-billion-dollar organization that does home improvement. I won't mention their names, but they're orange. And basically what I was telling them is that if you look at your social media page, everything is about you. None of it is about the community and the customer. That needs to shift. And to shift, here's how this looks. It looks like this, that the business begins to highlight the community, the customers, the team, and ultimately the business is for you. Because thriving organizations of the future will be less concerned with creating fans and more concerned with becoming a fan of the community and their customers. This is where the ball game is going. And so when you talk about building lasting relationships, that phrase is set up perfectly for this, to build lasting relationships with customers, build lasting relationships with Charlotte and Raleigh. I know we had one negative vote for Raleigh, but that's awesome. We want to build lasting relationships with the team, which is what we're doing here in Zoom, and then building relationships between Behringer and ourselves as individuals. So knowing that, I want to walk you through some specific examples of what I'm talking about, because I think this is a different approach. It's a new approach, but it's what you're doing. And I think it's one of the things that is causing you to hear what you hear from other people as they start commenting about working here or working with you. So to do that, let's start with for the customer, or for, in my case, the attender. The more personable, in today's world, the more personable, the more remarkable. So Chris, I'm sorry, I keep shouting you out, Chris Hyatt, but what you did by having dinner at somebody's house, that's a personable thing. And the more personable, the more remarkable. So how you can be more personable, the birthday things that y'all do, the more personable, the more remarkable. What I mean by the more remarkable is people talk about it and they remark and they say, that's different, that's unique, they noticed me. And when a customer feels noticed by an organization, and a growing organization, they respond to it. For example, when I was at our church, we would begin our staff meetings by going to Instagram, and we would search this hashtag that we did called For Gwinnett. And we would spend the first 10 minutes just liking photos and commenting. And the response we got from people going, the church noticed me on Instagram, the church commented, it shrunk the church from being a large church to being a church that's very personable. And let me tell you, here's your challenge, Behringer. All right, here's your challenge. All right. And I got this phrase from Dan Cathy, who's the president of Chick-fil-A. Dan's goal, and I think this should be one of your goals as well. Dan's goal was to grow a small company. To grow a small company. What does that mean? How do you grow a small company? What Dan said is, I never want to leave the small community feel of our company, even though we went from $1 billion to $13 billion in a matter of years. Your challenge is to grow a small company, and that's going to be extraordinarily difficult, but it is doable. And one of the ways you do that is to stay connected, and the more personable, the more remarkable. Now, the challenge with doing personable things is you think, I can't do it for everyone. But that's what I love what Andy Stanley says. He said, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And if you do enough of that, it's a lot of ones that add up. So don't talk yourself out. If you can't go to dinner at every client's house, we'll still go to one. If you can't do a birthday cake for everybody, at least do it for one. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone, and the customer's response to that. Now, I put in the book some practices, and I see you doing this, but when it comes to customer interaction, belonging leads to buying. And what I mean by that, this is why I love building lasting relationships, because what you're saying to your clients is, hey, we don't necessarily see you as a client. We see you as family. We see you as a relationship. You belong to the Behringer family. You put purpose in the purchase. Every time somebody, does something with you, there's a purpose to what you're doing here. You are having an influence beyond the business, and people are feeling an impact from the business. That's why when Tim was talking earlier and he was saying, you know what, we had this one mentor who was talking about when he got to the end of his career, he wanted to look back and see that, yeah, the business was successful, but it was more than just bottom line stuff. That you want to get to the end of your career and look back and go, there was influence, there was impact. This is what building lasting relationships is all about. And so as you continue to do this, creating opportunity for customers to belong to Behringer in terms of what you're doing, purpose in what you're doing, and influence beyond the business and an impact from the business. This is the fun part of this. And here's the quiet desperation in the working world right now. A lot of people want to work and go to work every day and have a bigger impact than just the work, and you're doing that. That's what building lasting relationships is all about. Let me talk to you real quick about this picture real quick. And I'll go back to this. When it comes to, let me give you an example in terms of what companies are doing as it relates to social media to highlight the customers. So I have a daughter, Jessie. She's 21 years old. And a few years ago, she graduated from high school. And she has this big, she lets this musical group, Johnny Swim. And Johnny Swim was coming to town. And Wendy said, hey, Johnny Swim's coming to town. And let's get, Jessie, and let's get our family. We have a family of 4. Tickets. So that's great. And Wendy said, hey, for an extra $50, we can get backstage passes, 50 each ticket. And I thought, well, I'm not very good at math, but 50 times 4 is $200. And we're already spending a lot of money on her college. I don't think we're going to do the backstage passes, right? So not a good dad move, but Dave Ramsey would be proud of me. So we didn't do the backstage passes. So Jessie's interning with this organization. And they said, they featured Jessie. This is Jessie Henderson. She loves this food and she likes this, and she's obsessed with Johnny Swim. All right. Well, shortly after this was posted on Instagram, my daughter sends a little text picture of this text thread, and with a phrase with the words OMG, and which she's a preacher's kid. That sounds for oh my gosh. And basically what she meant by that is Johnny Swim had commented back to her, and they said, we're obsessed with you too, Jessie. We love you too. Well, her friends saw that, she saw that, and she couldn't believe that Johnny Swim commented back to her. Here's what happened. Don't miss this, folks. Johnny Swim, this musical duo, left their social media platform, went onto the platform and communicated with my daughter and got really personable with her. And guess what happened? We bought the backstage passes, right? And that's what this picture is all about. This is Johnny Swim. Now, do you know why they're smiling in this picture? It's because they're $200 richer in this moment. And here's why. Don't miss this. This picture happened, and we're believing it was them. Maybe it was their social media director. I don't know. But with one click of a button, they generated fans, not just with my daughter, but when you make my daughter happy, you make daddy happy. And I'll give you $200, all right? And so the reason I tell you this is, how many of you have ever heard of Johnny Swim before this moment? 0. You know what I'm doing right now? I'm a vision carrier for them. You know why? Because they got really personable with me. And do you know how much money they're paying me for this moment? 0. And they should be paying me, all right? Because I'm traveling around the country talking about them. But here's the point. When Behringer gets really personable with their clients, the clients will respond because they realize it's deeper than just being business. You're trying to build a lasting relationship. And these two have built a lasting relationship in our minds with our daughter. So that's for the customer. But as great as for the customer is, I actually think this one is more important. And this is one of the many things that stands out to me in my interaction with Behringer. And here's why for the team is so important. And I've seen this in my previous life as a quick service restaurant person. This happens all the time. But the customer is eventually treated like the team is treated. The customer is eventually treated like the team is treated. So every organization has these declarative statements that we want to be the world's best workplace, and we love our team, and we want to be the best in terms of creating a great work environment. Very few actually deliver on that. And in my days in working in quick service restaurant, I could walk up to a counter, whether it was Chick-fil-A or a competitor, walk up to the counter, and I could tell how the team member was being treated because it was flowing right to me. So if I walked up to the counter and the person on the other side of the counter greeted me with a smile, so glad that you're here. Can I help you? Is there anything else I can do? That's how he or she is being treated. But when I walked up to the counter and there was no eye contact and it looked like I was actually bothering them by actually giving them money, then that's how he or she was being treated. Eventually, the customer is treated like the team is treated. And you can't say that we are for the customer if you can't deliver on being for the team. Now, let me tell you a little notorious secret about the church world. You know why many churches struggle? The reason many churches struggle is the church notoriously is a terrible place to work. And if it's a terrible place to work, eventually it's going to flow right to the people coming through the doors. It's true for church, it's true for business. So what I want to do is I want to give you something that I came up with based on working at Chick-fil-A, based on observations of other organizations. And what I want to do is walk you through how to be for the team. Now, I'm a little hesitant to do this because this is an organization that's won all these kind of workplace awards, all right? So I'm kind of literally preaching to the choir, okay? But what I want to do is I want to walk you through this, and this may give you an idea or two, those of you watching on Zoom and those of you in the room. Maybe you might want to pick up on one of these. But if you were to ask me, Jeff, how do you create a for the team culture? It's basically this diagram that I want to walk you through real quick. And I'm not going to take a lot of time here, but I do want to give you some specific examples on this. And when it comes to being for the team, your culture is determined by default or by design. A team culture, a company culture is created by default or by design. What do I mean by that? Well, if a leader or a leadership team says, we don't have time for this, okay, then what you've decided to do is you decided to create your culture by default. That never leads to anywhere good. We never drift toward health, right? We never drift toward organizational health. We're not sitting around at night watching TV going, you know what I need right now? I need a bowl of broccoli because I drift toward physical health. No, we go toward the other, right? And so we've got to create a culture by design. And so in my work career, working for, Chick-fil-A, North Point got all these workplace awards. I want to walk you through the 5-step process that I think they used. Now, you're already doing this in some form or fashion, but what I want to do is give you some specific examples, and maybe you'll just take one of them and continue to do what you're doing so well. So number one is believe abundantly. And the question isn't, do you believe in the team? The question is, when is the last time you told them that you believed in them? It's not, do you believe in the team? It's when have you said, I believe in you? Those words actually come out of your mouth. We have to believe abundantly about the team. And when we believe abundantly, we have to appreciate consistently. And I've already heard this in some examples. But what I mean by this is, what is your gratitude system? So for those of you watching on Zoom, what is your gratitude system? And what do I mean by a gratitude system? Well, there's a fantastic gratitude principle that says this, that unexpressed gratitude communicates in gratitude. In other words, if we feel grateful for the team, if we feel grateful for our leaders, if we feel grateful for the people that work for us, but we don't express it, that's unexpressed gratitude. And unexpressed gratitude communicates in gratitude. And one of the best things that any organization can do to create a for the team culture is to foster expressing your gratitude. And let me give you one specific way. And you might not want to do this. I totally understand that. But if it's not this, if this team will begin to continue to express your gratitude for one another, it will be a huge thing, because don't forget this, the customer is eventually treated like the team is treated. So here's my favorite example in terms of a gratitude system. So Frank Blake, who is the former CEO of Home Depot, when Frank was named CEO, the board at Home Depot had fired the current CEO. Frank was a CFO. He had never been a CEO before. So he gets a call. He's on a plane ride. He's on a plane. He gets a call from the chairman of the board and says, hey, congratulations, you're now the CEO of Home Depot. Imagine that phone call, right? He's never done this before. So he begins to turn things around. And the story of Frank Blake is really one of the best turnaround stories, I think, in recent business history. But I had this conversation with Frank, and I said, if you could only tell me one thing that you did to to make the turnaround happen, what would that happen? And he said, well, Jeff, I don't know if there's one thing. I said, I know, but just hang with me here. What one thing? And he said, well, the one thing that turned Home Depot around was I would write thank you notes every week. And I said, well, tell me about that. How many thank you notes would you write? He said, I would write 100 thank you notes a week. I said, 100 thank you notes a week? Didn't you have anything better to do, Frank? I mean, 100 thank you notes, that's a lot. And I said, so how did that work? He said, well, I developed a system. I had the different regions at Home Depot send me stories in, and on Sunday afternoons, I would sit in my office at home and I would write notes, 100. And he said, when I went out to the stores, it was amazing how many of the associates would come up to me and say, I got your note. I got your note. I've kept your note. Thank you. My favorite Frank Blake story is he's in a Home Depot one time and this guy comes up to him and says, Mr. Blake, you wrote me a thank you note. Thank you so much for doing that. But could you write me another one? And he's like, well, okay, why do you need me to write you another one? He goes, well, when I got your note, I showed it to my wife and I showed it to my coworkers and they all said it wasn't real. It was computer generated. And they said, if you actually take this note and put it underwater, the ink won't run because it's not a real note. He goes, so I took your note and I put it underwater. The good news is it was real. The ink ran. The bad news is it was real and the ink ran. Can you write me another one? And in that moment, Frank realized, wow, this is really, really, gratitude is a really important thing. Now, I understand. Frank Blake, CEO of Home Depot, I totally get it. And you already have, as an outsider, just looking in, you already have an appreciation for one another. But one of the best strategies you can have to keep thriving is to ramp that up. What if you started writing thank you notes? My goal is to write 3 thank you notes a day. I give myself Saturday and Sunday off, so I'm not good at math. As I mentioned earlier, I'm told that's 15 notes a week, 3 times 5. I can do that. When I recently left our organization, I wrote a handwritten note to every one of our staff to say thank you for the opportunity to serve you these last 17 years. When I left Chick-fil-A to become a pastor, I wrote everyone in marketing a handwritten note to basically say, hey, if this church doesn't work out, can I come back and work here? Okay, so thank you is really, really important. What's your gratitude system? Number 3, develop intentionally. There's 3 big ways that we need to develop people. People leadership, thought leadership, and project leadership. People leadership, thought leadership, and project leadership. But typically in organizations, it's the project leadership that is focused on the most. So in your meetings, what I would encourage you to do is to start first with people leadership and thought leadership. How can we think about the future? And how are our people doing? Then number 4 is listen actively. The better questions you ask, the better answers you find. My personal example on this, or one of my heroes on this, is Cheryl Botchelder. Cheryl also led a very big turnaround with Popeye's Chicken. And when she joined the role at CEO, Popeye's was in a mess. So she went and just began to go around and start speaking with their franchise owners. And she would ask this question, which is a great question to ask one another, by the way. She would ask this question, when do we do our best work together? Behringer, that's a great question for you to ask one another. When do we do our best work together? So Cheryl goes to this franchise meeting. It's kind of like this. And she asks this question, hey, when do we do our best work together? And a guy raises his hand and said, oh, that's easy. When you don't show up with a PowerPoint presentation. She's like, whoa, okay, let's do this thing, right? So she goes, tell me more. That's what she would do. She would ask a question and say, tell me more. And she said, okay, when I show up with a PowerPoint presentation and that doesn't mean that we're going to do our best work, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, when you show up with a PowerPoint presentation, it looks like you already know all the answers and you're just trying to convince us of your answers. Instead, if you'll show up with a flip chart with a couple of markers and let's tackle the problem together, that's when we do our best work. And so that's what Cheryl started to do. But what she did in that moment is she listened actively and she placed the ideas that she heard into the business. And then, Behringer, here's what, of the 5 of these, just one man's opinion, you didn't ask me for this, but of the 5 of these, I would say live repeatedly is your big challenge right now. It's not a challenge, I would say opportunity. What do I mean by that? Well, you've already done the really hard work of trying to understand what you want to be known for, building lasting relationships. But what you've got to do is you got to say it over and over and over again. Don't assume. When it comes to live repeatedly, vision rarely repeated is quickly forgotten. So let me give you an example of that, and then we're going to move to for the community. Anybody a big, I hope, Chris, you're not doing a ticker every time I say Chick-fil-A. Anybody a big Chick-fil-A fan? No, Chick-fil-A fans? So when you go to Chick-fil-A and you say thank you, what do they say back? My pleasure. So I was at the company convention when Truett stood up and said, hey, I was at the Ritz-Carlton recently, and I said thank you, and they didn't say you're welcome. They said my pleasure. And I thought, remember I told you Truett was frugal? He said, we can steal that for free. So from now on, I want us to say my pleasure. So Wendy was there. We all stood up. Truett made us stand up. He said thank you, and we said my pleasure. We did it a few times, right? We got it. So the convention ends. A few days later, Truett gets in his car. He's driving around, and he goes into a Chick-fil-A and orders a sandwich he created. And he says thank you to the team member, and the team member says, you're welcome. All right, I thought we already, we stood up. We all said, my pleasure. We got this, right? How complicated is this? So Truett didn't fire anybody. He didn't get mad. You know what he did? He just kept saying it over and over and over again. And do you know how long it took Chick-fil-A to really incorporate that phrase in? 10 years. They have video of Truett for 10 years having us all stand up. He says thank you, and we all say my pleasure. And every time I go to Chick-fil-A and I hear my pleasure, and by the way, I'm going to ruin my pleasure for you for the rest of your lives, all right? Every time, and in a really good way, every time you hear my pleasure from now on, I want you to think building lasting relationships. Am I staying on message like Truett Cathy stayed on message? You see, as leaders, I think we often think that people like Truett Cathy or Cheryl Botchelder, it's just easier for them. That's not true. This is really hard stuff. These are really challenging things. But what leaders like Truett and Cheryl do, and what you do, is you just stay on message. Building lasting relationships is a fantastic message. Don't assume everyone knows it. Don't assume everyone knows. Thank you, my pleasure, because they don't. Leaders are repeaters. Now, there's a lot more to this. It's not an exhaustive list, but this is one of the ways to be for the team. One of the things I love that you're doing right now is to being for the community. Now, I want to show you a little bit of marketing research that shows you that the younger the demographic, the more people are asking the question of businesses, what are you doing for our community? In other words, in your case, what are you doing for Charlotte and what are you doing for Raleigh? That's going to be a growing sense of importance. There's a friend of mine that leads, I don't know if you've got kids, the Baby Einstein toys. So he's the global marketing officer. And he said, Jeff, we're just shocked in a really good way. The younger parents are asking, what is Baby Einstein, or the company Kids to Kids, what are you doing to help make our world and community a better place? And if you're not, we're not going to do business with you. This is where business is going. This isn't some random pastor telling you this. This is marketing research. And when you compete more on purpose than on price, ultimately your profit will grow. And what we discovered at Chick-fil-A is we can charge more at Chick-fil-A because we're going to compete on purpose more than on price. And here's why this is so important in my estimation. In today's world, doing good is good for business. This is why I am so excited about spending a lot more time in the business world, because I firmly believe this is true. And the marketing research is proving it out. Let me show you some of what I'm talking about. And we're going to talk a little bit about brands. I understand that, but the latest marketing research says that 75% expect brands or companies to contribute to our well-being and quality of life. This is only going up. but only 40% believe brands or companies are actually doing this. Behringer, this is an extraordinary opportunity because you're already doing this. You're way down the field from companies that aren't even thinking like you're thinking. But what the competitive advantage is what are you doing to help make the community a better place? People are wanting that and they're looking for it. 74% would not care if the brands they use disappeared. And the reason they don't is because they don't think the brands actually care about them. And this is the most shocking one. Only 27% believe brands that they use will make life better. So this whole idea of building relationships, one of the many reasons why I like this so much is because if you can take that and extrapolate it out to, hey, and you're already doing this. I totally understand that. But if you can extrapolate it and tease it out even more to go, what can we do for Charlotte and what can we do for Raleigh? And you're going to build a tribe of community. That's going to be a game changer. And it's hard to compete against that because people want to understand what your purpose is and how are you making the community a better place. And that's what you're doing. Now, to close out, I want to talk about you for a second, because as great as for the customer is, as important as for the team is, as important as for the community is, I want to talk about you. Because every organization needs to elevate and encourage you. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in the afternoon. But the reason this is important is the best gift that you can give Behringer is a healthy, inspired you. Because every thriving organization, as I mentioned earlier, if you open it up, you see thriving, growing people. And this word inspired is really important. And so a question I have for you, and you don't have to answer it, is how inspired are you right now? These are challenging days, right? And what challenging days do is they can wear down on our personal vision. They can chisel away at our inspiration. And so the goal for leaders, the goal for any organization, and the goal for teams isn't to get inspired. That's one thing. The goal is to remain inspired. So let me ask you, Behringer, nobody has to answer anything. How inspired are you? Did you wake up inspired? If you didn't, that's okay. Welcome to life in a challenging season right now. But what I would share with you is that there are some ways that you can fight to remain inspired. I want to give you one of them, and then we're going to close. What I'm going to encourage everyone in the room and everyone watching on Zoom, before you go to bed tonight, I want you to do one thing. And I don't know how this is going to play out in your world, but I want you to ask big of someone. Ask big. It could be ask big of a client. It could be ask big of a team member. It could be ask big of someone in your life. Maybe you want to do something this weekend. Maybe watch a football game, and or whatever you want to do. Ask big of somebody today. And what I mean by that, I'm going to give you an example. What I mean by asking big is you're a little uncomfortable asking them because what if they say no? And here's what I want to encourage you to do. As you ask big, you're having to fight to be inspired. And here's what I've decided to do in my life. I've decided to no longer answer for people. I'm going to give them an opportunity to tell me no. So I'll give you an example. When I read a lot. When I read an autobiography of someone I like, I'll try to find them, stalk them online, and find their address and write them a letter. So a few years ago, I read an autobiography of Warren Buffett. So I wrote Warren Buffett, I found his address, his office in Omaha. And I said, Mr. Buffett, my name's Jeff. I'm a pastor, and I want to come out and meet with you. And I want to ask you 3 questions, but I'm not asking for money. I'm not going to ask for money, but I just read your book, and I would love to come out and ask you 3 questions. And I get a letter back from Warren, richest man in the world, depending on the stock market, Buffett. And it was, Dear Jeff, no. But I have a letter from Warren Buffett and you don't. And the reason you don't is because you haven't asked him. Now, you may not even care who Warren Buffett is, but there are times when I'll write and I'll get a yes. For example, I grew up in Atlanta and I was a big fan of the civil rights movement, and I read a book by Ambassador Andrew Young, who is a key part in the civil rights movement. And I wrote him a letter and he responded back to me, and that began a friendship with Andrew Young. And the only reason is because I asked big. So who do you need to ask big of a client, of a boss, of a team member, of a personal relationship? And when you do that, what you're showing yourself is you are remaining inspired and you are dreaming and thinking big. And when you dream and think big, you're giving Behringer a healthy, inspired you. So let me give you one final example. I mentioned my daughter, Jessie, when she graduated from high school. By the way, I have a son too. I love him. I just have no stories about him today. So when Jessie graduated from high school, we were saying, honey, within reason, let's go celebrate somewhere in the country, And she said, well, Dad, I'd love to go to San Francisco. I was like, that's awesome. Let's go to San Francisco. And then I remembered growing up, our kids loved Pixar movies, Finding Nemo and Toy Story and all that. And a few years ago, I had met Ed Catmull, the president of Pixar, just for a brief moment, got my picture with him, and he would never remember me. And I thought, oh, how cool would it be is if we're out in San Francisco, if we could get a private tour of Pixar Studios, because I'd seen in the Monsters Inc. DVD, remember DVDs back in those days? They had a kind of a private backstage tour on the DVD about Pixar headquarters. I thought, this is so cool. So I wrote Ed Catmull a letter. And I said, Mr. Catmull, I know you won't remember me, but here's a picture we took, #stalker. And my name's Jeff. My daughter just graduated from high school. We're coming out to San Francisco. I know your offices are near there. Is there any way that we could get a private backstage tour, just the Henderson family? And so while I'm writing this note, here's what's happening. By the way, do y'all talk to yourselves? Because I do. All right. And if you say you don't, you're lying. So I'm talking to myself, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm thinking, how cool would this be if I get a backstage tour from my daughter at Pixar? And there's another voice inside my head that says, don't you have anything better to do? This is a complete and total waste of your time. You don't even know if this is actually the actual address. There's no way in the world this letter is ever going to get to him. How cool would this be? You're a loser. And ladies and gentlemen, that's where we live. There are two voices competing. Oh, what if they say no? Don't ask. Don't remain inspired. Oh, but what if it works? So I wrote the letter, mailed it. It was kind of like putting a letter in a bottle and throwing it in the ocean. Would I ever hear back? And 4 months go by and I don't hear a word. And let me tell you, let me give you a little warning. When you ask big, you're going to get a lot more no's than you get yeses. That's okay. You're going to get a lot more yeses by asking big. So 4 months later, I get this call from Oakland, California. I don't know anybody from Oakland, California. And I've been told, don't answer your phone if you don't know who it is. So I just hit click. But later that night, I noticed that I had a voicemail from Oakland, California. So I listened to the voicemail and it said, Mr. Henderson, this is Wendy from Ed Catmull's office. We got your letter and we would love to give your family a private tour. To which I said, shut up. It actually worked, right? So fast forward, we drive up there and we drive up to the iconic Pixar gates, which Steve Jobs designed, by the way. And we drive up to the security guard. I roll down the window and I'm like, hello, we're the Hendersons from Swanee, Georgia for our backstage tour. And there's pause. Like, I'm thinking, oh, this didn't work. The kids will never let me hear the end of it. And then he says, welcome, Henderson family from Swanee, Georgia. We've been looking forward to this. They gave us these little badges that said strangers from the outside. That was really cool. I love that. So we walked around. They actually showed us where Steve Jobs' office was when he was alive and he's still there. They showed us all the Academy Awards. They took us to the backstage tour. They bought us lunch. And then, I don't know, maybe we're just nice Southern people. They said, okay, we're going to do something that we never do. We're going to take you and let you actually see a movie that's being worked on right now. It was a movie called Coco. I don't know if you saw it, but they were working on it. But we had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that basically says, if you tell anybody about what you see, we can kill you. That was a little disturbing. So we had to sign that non-disclosure agreement. But my favorite part of the moment is we're walking, and as I mentioned, they bought us lunch. We're walking to the cafeteria, and my daughter says, Dad, this is so cool. Well, y'all, I stopped being cool to my daughter years ago. And in that moment when she said that, I thought, oh my goodness, I almost talked myself out of this moment by not asking big. That's why, for me, this picture is on my desk at home. It's a reminder to me to keep asking big, because if I had not asked big, this picture would not have happened at Pixar. So Behringer, when it comes to the best gift that you can give this organization and this team, you got to fight. You got to fight for remaining inspired. And one of the ways you do that is to dream big. And one of the ways you dream big is to ask big. Who are you going to ask big of before you go to bed tonight? Don't worry about their answer. Let their answer be their answer. Your responsibility is to make the ask. So maybe there's something with a client, I don't know how this works for you, that you were a little hesitant to ask. Go ahead and ask big. And by doing that, that's how you will be giving one of the best gifts that you can give to your organization, by remaining inspired. And when it comes to this, these two questions, I think these are two questions that are important for Behringer to wrestle with, and you already have wrestled with them. But can I be honest with you? These two questions, they're actually more important for you. And we're going to come back this afternoon and wrestle through a little bit of this. But don't worry, I'm not going to ask you this. But if I were to ask you, what do you want to be known for personally? What would you tell me? What would you tell me? What would you share with me? Hey, this is what I want to be known for personally. And if you haven't thought about it in a while, we're going to give you some time to do that this afternoon. And that, I think, is so important. But ultimately, here's what's challenging about this. If I'm up here and I'm telling you, I want to be the most amazing husband, right? Do you know who you have to go to get the actual answer? It's not me. It's her. How am I doing, babe? Am I doing all right? Pretty good? All right, good. If I want to be a great dad, you know who ultimately I have to go to? Not me. I got to go to Jesse and Cole. That's why that second question is really a hard question for us personally. But here's what I believe. If you get around these questions for you personally, it helps you become a better team member at Behringer. So what do you want to be known for personally? Have you thought about that? For those of you watching on Zoom, apparently Chris Hyatt, you want to be known for having dinner with your clients at their house. That's awesome. So what do you want to be known for personally in your areas of your life? And then what if you took the real courageous step and began to ask the people in your life, am I living up to what I want to be known for? And hey, let me just tell you, none of us are perfect, but we all need to strive to close the gap, because the reality for you and the reality for me is there's a gap right now, isn't there? But every single day that we're breathing is an opportunity to shrink the gap. Now, I'll close with this, and this is why I think this company is really important for lots of different reasons. In a hypercritical, cynical world, often known for what it's against, let's be a community of leaders. Let's be a company of leaders known for who and what we're for. I think we would agree that we're living in some pretty hostile, volatile days. And I think what we're needing are entrepreneurs, business leaders who will step out and say, hey, at the end of the day, here's what we want to be known for. Because being against something has a law of diminishing returns. But being for people has a multitude of layers of value. And as I've observed this company for the last few months and have had interactions with you all, this is who I think you are. And this is why this company is so important. Here, let me tell you something and I'm done, I promise. I know I'm standing between you and lunch. As a pastor, one of the things people have told me when I left the business world is they said, hey, when did you decide to go in a purpose-filled, to work for a purpose-filled organization? It's as if nonprofits exclusively have purpose. I completely think that is incorrect. What this company is doing is you're living out purpose. And the more purpose you have, the more profit you have. Because I think what you're going to discover in the future, purpose fuels profit and profit fuels purpose. That's the power of being in favor of people, of your customers, of your team, of your community, and you. And that's why I'm a big fan. And thank you for being for Wendy and me, because this was the very first opportunity in our new chapter, and you gave that to us, and we will be forever grateful. So, Tim, I'll hand it back to you.